Hi, welcome back to week 2 of City Vision's Social Entrepreneurship course. I'm Andrew Sears, and this week I'm going to talk about some advice for picking your project and your minimum viable product. Just as a reminder, the whole purpose of this course is to help you grow in your create quadrant competencies. So you're going to want to get a project that's going to stretch you in that. So that's one of the key ideas. As I mentioned to you before, I took accounting classes and I took them and I tried to turn them, or actually it was a law class, and I tried to turn it into an entrepreneurial class. My professor did not give me good grades in that because he was trying to get me to learn, the principles of law, not principles of entrepreneurship. And it's the same type of thing that to try to, pick a project that's going to help you in that. Now, that may be a challenge, as I mentioned, given what stage your organization's in. If you're an early stage startup, then this is going to work great. If you're a mid-stage startup, that's fine. If you're in a later stage organization, you may have to think about this a little more hypothetically. If you're an organization that's going through a lot of change because of new leadership, then you might have more opportunities. Now, one of the principles to keep in mind is that often people, if you are detail oriented or if you're in an organization that's very strong in the control quadrant, the principle is if your only tool is a hammer, you treat everything like a nail. Your organization and you personally might tend to treat everything like a hammer. And the point is that this course, we need you to use the hammer on the nail and use the wrench, on the bolt. So this is a course where we need you to try to pick a project that's going to fit with the course. So some of the differences on this is what's the difference between a business model canvas and a business plan. So a business plan is largely in the compete quadrant. It's for proven business models in a new context. So, if you're starting up a new restaurant in a new location, there's hundreds of thousands of restaurants. You're not inventing the first restaurant. But the create quadrant would be for a completely new business model. So whenever online food delivery first came out or Uber first came out, they didn't really know how the model was going to work, and they had to do a lot of pivots. And even recently, there's been a lot of pivots in this with differences in regulation and things along those lines. So these are high risk initiatives versus lower risk initiatives. Extremely high uncertainty, low to moderate uncertainty. Starting a new restaurant, it's often there's uncertainty. Are you going to succeed? But a lot of these high tech startups, it's like 1% succeed. This is where you're being more intuitive, you're rapidly adapting, detailed, organized planning, and this is going to push the organization to innovate. This is going to push the organization to plan. And we have our entrepreneurship course, or I think it used to be called Small Business Management course, and the focus of this course is on this create quadrant. So try to come up with something that's more in this domain. Now, another way of framing this is how you do project management. So there's something called waterfall project management, and that's really the business plan model, and it's a 2 to 5 year learning cycle. Some of you are in organizations that create a 5-year strategic plan, and you don't need to deviate from that strategic plan hardly at all, during the 5 years because you're in a stable space. So there you develop your plan, you implement it across 5 years, and then you might do intensive feedback before your next plan. Whereas Agile is something where you do a plan, you release it. So, you might have, scrums where you release it and then you come up with your next plan. And this could be every 2 weeks or a month or something. But the difference between Agile and Lean is there's a larger cycle between when you're doing a deep dive on customer feedback. Whereas Lean, you're really trying to optimize your model based on how quickly can you learn. So you want to get an iteration out, then get customer feedback, get another iteration out, then get customer feedback, get another iteration out, and then get customer feedback. And that's really the emphasis of the lean startup model. So, a lot of people look at this and they say, well, there's nothing hugely innovative about that. But what is innovative is how do you optimize everything in your organization to maximize your learning speed? Innovation increases as your loop iteration speed increases. And that's the idea behind this diagram. One of the things I often like to say with City Vision is, we may not have started as the best in class, but we want to be the most improved in class every year. And we have optimized all our processes to, we scour the student feedback that people give us, and we, talk with customers, hundreds of meetings a year, and take careful notes and iterate on what we're doing to improve. We've been growing at about 20% a year, and our quality's been improving at 20% a year. And that's a lot of, City Vision is a lean startup organization. So the other way of thinking about this, for those of you who are familiar with the difference between Jewish and Hebrew culture and Western thinking, Hebrew culture is more cyclical. And the idea is you're going to be generally going in a direction. So it's kind of like this, ascending ramp or a corkscrew. But you're going to be going around and around and around. And the idea of this process is you start off with an idea that's just your best guess, so a 10% chance of success. But after you've gone through, 8 iterations and you pivoted, then you're going to have a much higher chance of success. That is as opposed to you create a business plan and you're just going to do your 10% chance of success business plan. And it's hard to make as quick of pivots on that. So identifying a good organization and project to use in this course. As I've emphasized, it will work best if you pick a project that fits the lean startup and business model canvas approach. Now, we've had some people just say, well, I am a program director and this program has existed for 30 years and I'm going to do it. Well, there you're using a hammer to, knock in a bolt, or you're using a wrench to knock in a nail. And you may not get as good a grade in this course. And you may think that the whole course is completely repetitive because you don't need to iterate on this. So you're going to be much better off if you do new programs, products, divisions, and revenue streams that are, and that's going to be better if they're in high uncertainty domains. So that's highly recommended. For nonprofits, earned income and social enterprise initiatives often will fit better, but they could be new programs. So this is suggested. This other thing is highly recommended. But the thing that is most important is that you need to be able to interview some potential customers, and these could be internal stakeholders in your organization. And this is required. If you can't do this, then it's kind of like taking a speech course and saying, well, I don't want to do public speaking. Well, that's the requirement of the course. So if you can't, find anyone to interview, then you're going to have a hard time, doing this course. So, the other thing is you need to be able to identify unproven hypotheses that need to be tested. That's a part of the lean startup process, and part of what you'll do in your worksheet this week is you'll outline, what are the hypotheses that need to be tested. Is there going to be revenue? Is there actually demand for this thing? Are your partners going to work the way you want them to work? So there's also a question. A lot of our organizations may be in older a lot of our students may be in older organizations with very stable business models and limited culture of innovation. So you could do your project as a dream exercise, recognizing that the ability to implement may be limited. You can imagine that you started your own nonprofit or business and ask your organization to invest in it as a spin-out. Or it could be outside your organization entirely, but you still need to be able to find people that you could interview to get feedback on. Your product could be a training program for innovation in your organization. So like an innovative young leaders development program. You can imagine your product as a nonprofit or for-profit subsidiary that has constraints, or has, less constraints. So like a nonprofit owned catering business or affordable housing subsidiary, an online thrift store business. You can consider a business version of what your nonprofit does. So your nonprofit might do counseling, but you might do a mobile counseling service, or remote through Zoom counseling service. As I've emphasized, try to avoid projects on stable programs and products with limited ability to implement. That's the point of most of the tools. So the next thing you're going to go through is We're going to give an overview of the workbook 1 that's going to help you brainstorm your project and MVP. And I would encourage, even as you're creating that worksheet, you're going to get to the end and you may want to revise some of your earlier slides. So use this iteration principle as you're going through this. If you have any questions, please ask your faculty. Thanks a lot.